Hey everybody, welcome to the Dreamer's Edge podcast 2012! Yay! Alright, we're a small little bunch today. I've got to my left...
Yannis, how you doing everybody? I'm a subtitle editor, sometime cocktail genius.
Hey.
Alright, and this is Chris, occasional writer and editor as well.
And I'm Dimitri, webmaster of DreamersEdge.com and movie critic. And also we have today a very special guest star. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Nick Nolte in the room with us.
Why did you come on the ship? Nice to see you.
It's an honor.
Pleasure. Me too.
Alright, no, actually, who we have here with us as well is...
Oh, I'm Eric. Sometimes writer, full-time teacher.
Yes, and today we are going to talk about 2011 and 2012. Actually, we're mostly going to talk about what we want from 2012, since this is a new year and we're all looking forward to it. Now, let's kind of start with something I like to call show and tell, and we're going to do something different. Instead of making recommendations, we're going to talk to you about a little bit about what came as a surprise to us in 2011, so that in case you missed it, you can maybe catch it, although we'll probably have spoiled it for you at this point. Why don't you get us started, Nick Nolte?
Yes.
What came as a surprise to me this year? Actually, recently, I just watched the movie Warrior, and quite frankly, I never expected it. I'm not a big fan of those big UFC or MMA, the whole thing, but for some reason, that movie really worked. And I didn't expect to enjoy a kind of film like that. And okay, I'm gonna say this. Usually when it's Friday, I'm pretty tired because I'll teach, and I get home and I'll watch a movie, and most of the time I fall asleep on it. That movie I watched till the end, and I was so invested.
In terms of, surprises of the year 2011, I have to say that was the biggest surprise for me too. Like I like the sports genre as long as there's no animal in it. Air Pooch or whatever.
Right.
The underdog sports movie where the dog is the underdog. I'm not a big fan of, and there's more movies in that genre than you would care to admit.
Yes, I love the Karate Dog, personally.
But they follow beats. I kind of knew what you were going to get, so I wasn't in a hurry to watch it. But when I did see it, it blew me away. It was just was really good. Tom Hardy was awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And, Nick Nolte, if you can maybe tell me a little bit about your acting.
No! Don't get on the ship! No!
No, but Nick Nolte himself was good. He's maybe, for me, almost the weakest part of the movie just because of one of the tropes that he's got as a character. But the two characters who are doing the fighting are each believable. The fighting itself, again, as a non-mixed martial arts fan, looked real to me. The choreography of the fighting, was good. It was exciting, kinetic, energetic,
Yeah, and what's more, it sort of reflected their personality. It's not just cut away to fight and then they fight and whether or not their victory matters. The way they approach the ring actually said something about the characters.
Yeah.
I'm with both of you guys. I saw it at a press screening and I was blubbering like a little girl in the thing because it's so affecting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, at the end you're kind of like, whew. Especially with that song from the Nationals. It works so well with what's going on.
All right, let's move on. Yannis, blew you away in 2011, or at least intrigued you?
Well, I wouldn't say blew me away, but I was pleasantly surprised by a new series from ABC, Happy Endings.
Wait. There's a new series from ABC that somebody likes?
Yeah, it's actually hard to believe. I'm not a huge fan of network television, but Happy Endings sitcom, very good and very refreshing from a sitcom angle. Follows the lives of, I guess, late 20, early 30-somethings. And they're all best friends, live in Chicago. But I think what sets this show apart from others is, one, there's a third more dialogue in the show than any other show running at 22 minutes. So it's a fast-paced show, and it looks like, so far, it seems to be true, every line of dialogue is a punchline. So if there's not something you immediately catch and find amusing, there will be something surely with 30 seconds from now. Usually in sitcoms, you gravitate to one particular character for an idiosyncrasy or something you find familiar. But in this particular show, they all seem to gel really well together and take the time out to poke fun at themselves, which I find amusing.
Yeah, and I think it's something you're starting to see more and more with the sitcoms. It's, I guess, each of the characters is the Kramer character, so to speak.
That's right.
Did you say Creamer or Kramer?
Kramer.
Oh.
Sorry. It's a character from Seinfeld.
I know, but you said Creamer.
No, I heard Kramer.
No, he said
You just
Kramer.
have a dirty mind.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that one. I was just making fun of his pronunciation, but
It's pronunciation.
No, but normally that would grate on me because it just gets too idiosyncratic. It's, everyone's the eccentric, In this one, they play up all those foibles in a really funny way. The characters are engaging. And, I'm not sure. It's one of those shows, and I think you're right. Like, it's just joke a second, not joke a minute.
Yeah.
And I wonder how long you're going to be able to keep that up. It's something like Arrested Development. It's just like by the third season, you're like, my God, I'd hate to be a writer on that show.
Yeah.
And in this one, they usually tend to try and do the 2 or 3 storylines again. Everyone's doing jokes all the time, and it's just like throwaways after throwaway. It's somewhat meta, not to the level of Community, but for the time it's going to be on, I'm gonna tune in for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's good.
You guys have me sold. I'm definitely going to check it out because I keep catching like the end of it because I have a DVR and it records a minute earlier.
What about you, Dimitri?
Yeah, I'm going to stay in the realm of television as well. Like you, Yannis, I was a bit disappointed by network television. Well, you is more of a constant thing. For me, it's this year. This year has been pretty bad for network TV, I find. Nothing much of interest, but there's one show that actually surprised me quite a bit because I thought it was going to be trashy as hell, but Revenge actually is trashy as hell, but like in all the right ways. It's like watching Dynasty with like all the rich people doing crazy stuff that you want to slap them in the face, except somebody in the show actually does it for you. It's this girl whose father was framed for essentially 9/11. Tasty. And she comes back, changes her identity, and goes back to the family that framed her father and inserts herself into their circle to destroy it from the inside, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was you that was telling me about it. I still haven't gone back. I think it's just restarted now. I think we're airing, right? It just came back from... I might check out a couple episodes. Just it seems like it could be fun. Just a little bit soapy, but, interesting.
Yeah, and it's cool all the literary references they have in there. Like, well, of course they're doing Count of Monte Cristo, but they did a couple of references to Cyrano de Bergerac in this episode. And during Sweeps, they had an episode where a new character came in to sort of shuffle the cards around who had his own agenda, and essentially he was Mr. Ripley from The Talented Mr. Ripley. And they do these neat little things like that. It's actually kind of fun.
Okay. It's funny, we're all talking TV, and now it's making me want to think about something different. But it's true, I really think that 2011 for me was kind of a year of television. Like, it just, I was surprised with a lot of the stuff I saw. Even though certain shows that I really liked had kind of come to an end, The Wire or Battlestar, and I think I was maybe watching a little bit more TV than I generally do, just looking to fill that gap, in a way. And so I sampled a few things. And I think the biggest surprise for me for 2011, though, was Sherlock. It's a BBC series. It's a 3-episode arc, generally. And each episode is an hour and a half, so it's just like they're like mini movies. I don't know how they're aired necessarily, but it's with Benedict Cumberbatch, whose name I love. And I think he's going to be in The Hobbit as the dragon, actually.
That's right, yeah.
But he's also just recently in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and he really does a really good performance there.
An interesting guy who actually talked himself out of a kidnapping in South Africa.
Oh,
Yeah.
Really?
He wrote these guys that were about to put him in the trunk and ransom him, and he's like, "Oh, no, you can't do that. I have a heart condition, and you don't want me to." And yeah, ended up talking his way out of it.
wow.
He's got a very strange, almost alien-looking face. You know what I mean? Like, there's something about him. Like,
is perfect
but it
for
works
Sherlock Holmes.
so well for Sherlock, exactly.
Yeah.
Just because he just looks like he's cut from alabaster, and he's just like this weird, otherworldly person who's just got his obsessions. And But what they've done with this Sherlock series is that they've, counter to, the Guy Ritchie, steampunkish series that, is in the theater. This BBC series is kind of a reboot in modern time. The Watson character is, basically a soldier from Afghanistan. He comes back with an injury from, a recent war. He's looking to establish himself in London, can't afford it. Maybe his injury is psychosomatic, who knows. And then there's Sherlock Holmes, who, like the actual Sherlock from the short stories by Conan Doyle, he's obsessed with, everything ephemeral, just the tabloids and this and that. So what is he going to gravitate to, of course, is, Twitter and texting and all these things. And so there's a real drive of the technology and how he uses technology to kind of absorb things and memorize things and look at things and contact people. And he plays it up in a really interesting character. The Watson character is also going to be in The Hobbit. But what's his name?
He's actually the Hobbit.
He's Tim from...
Yeah, Tim from the Office.
UK Office.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
I'm blanking on his name. And they're really good together. They play it up well.
Oh, that does sound very interesting.
So that was my most interesting. I didn't quite. I'm a big fan of the mystery genre, but I've never necessarily been a big fan of the core text of the Conan Doyle stories. I like the ideas, but I don't really go back and reread them because they're so much fun. As much as every now and then I try to, because I think it's supposed to be good for me. But but this show is awesome. It makes reference to certain stories, But I'd recommend it. But this was a bit of a surprise. But I think the thing that really amazed me, and maybe something I would talk about a little bit more, is the Game of Thrones. I just really didn't think fantasy would get a buy-in on such a broad scale. With the number of people that I've spoken to who got so into it, who never read fantasy books, who never, so in terms of, it makes sense that somebody's going to buy the Dan Brown books and, that's a mystery. That's fine. But it makes no sense that I'm talking to my mother and she wants to read Game of Thrones.
That is interesting.
So I found for me that was the biggest surprise.
But in the Game of Thrones, though, you do get this power struggle between the houses. You're tossed into the swirl that has its own logic, but there's also this thing where it's not really about magic with wizards that are...
So the fantasy is the vehicle, but it's not necessarily...
It is in this land of fantasy, but it's really about people that are trying to get power and everything.
But it's not a new trope. It's one of those fantasy novels where it takes place in a fantasy world where kind of magic has died, so to speak. And and Lord of the Rings is almost like that at a certain level too. People are kind of just it's a strange world. No one sees magic as the day-to-day, but it's just it's more just the strangeness is a reality. But in this one, it really is kind of like a medieval land.
Yeah, exactly. And you have bastards, you have dwarves, you have incest, you have everything else.
I love you put dwarves with bastards and incest. I don't...
That's the way my mind works.
When a brother and sister have sex. But yeah, no, for me, I found that was more interesting cultural development. You know what I mean? It's just, and I'm curious to see where that goes. Are we going to have more of this type of stuff on broadcast television? And I guess maybe we have already with Happy Endings and Grimm.
Happy Endings, Once Upon a Time.
Or Once Upon a Time, sorry. Yeah, sorry. But so maybe we're moving a little bit away from science fiction and towards this safer realm of just, fantasy nostalgia of the fairy tale and, just this medieval order. I don't know.
I think it comes a lot from the fact that the dork has become mainstream in recent years.
Yeah.
And that means more female dorks.
And I would say production-wise, I would think a fantasy setting would be easier.
No, I actually think the
than
opposite.
science fiction. Really? You think so?
Because you got to film with animals, and because horses and whatnot.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to say
the
cost
sets,
efficient
the
wise.
castles, even though you can CGI a lot of that stuff,
Not that
but the
many dwarves out
costume.
there who act.
That's right.
Let alone bastard incest ones. But it's exterior scenes as well, which means you can only film during the day as opposed to a spaceship.
That's right. That's a good point. Yeah.
No, I really do think it's women dork are suddenly free to be dorks and take over the market a little bit more. So fantasy is going to have a bigger place in the market, I think.
Yeah, no, I think you might actually be onto something, but I hadn't thought about it that way. And So, but I think you might be right.
But HBO is an interesting kind of phenomenon in itself, like the way that they kind of reinvent the genre. And
I don't think they're really reinventing the genre. What they're doing is they're trying to give you a historical depiction of the genre.
I think if HBO has a theme as a network, it's basically about certain civilizations. You know, so
Yeah.
it's Rome, it's the mafia, it's a rebuilding of New Orleans after the flood.
Yeah.
It's the social network of medieval world makes sense within, it's not as
Yeah.
strange, you know what I mean? Because it's another extreme, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
whereas Rome is the collapse of an empire, this one is kind of the, this fantasy world is basically the build up of, a new empire, so, I do think they've actually got a little bit of a through line.
Well, I think the thread is
conquest.
realism. They tend to strive for a level of realism that you don't see in other network shows that try to tackle the same subject genre.
But there's been a lot of, self-analysis on this in the States as well, just about the idea of their place as, an empire. Because now they've got Treme, they've got Boardwalk Empire, and they've got Game of Thrones. All these things, I guess, are, if I'm going to follow this through logically, are meditations, on the idea of, collapse, rebuild,
Sure.
Pivotal moments in history.
Well, actually, that leads in quite comfortably into what we really wanted to talk about, which is, what do we expect from 2012? So, using this as a segue, do you expect more stories of that kind, that sort of fall of the empire?
Well, I think 2012, the world's supposed to end, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's just a natural progression that... But no... I don't know. I feel like people want a bit of hope in their life right now. And so I don't know what's in the works, you know what I mean? But I feel like something like Avengers might do better than a Dark Knight Rising if Dark Knight is too dark again. It's going to do so well, but if something like Avengers has a little bit more of this group of people that we've been following for so many years, it finally comes together in this movie, and we just feel good.
in very bright colors.
That America's been able to kick ass. I think that's almost going to latch into the zeitgeist of the cultural need more than just one man against the world and depressed again. I don't know. I feel like at least maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I feel like I feel like people are a little bit starting to get tired of that. You know what I mean? So I don't know. You know what I mean? I think we're going to see more stories of collapse, but I think we need something a little bit more uplifting.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'm trying to think as 2011, the summer blockbusters of 2011 as a model, and I can't help but notice that, Rise of the Planet of the Apes was a surprise hit, and that's a kind of a gloomy story. Whereas films like Captain America and certainly Green Lantern sort of underperformed a little bit, and those are actually the hopeful ones. So
I think that, right now, the U.S. economy is in a state where it looks like it's going to be status quo for the next little while. And I think a lot of people do feel like one man against the world, because everyone feels like, yeah, they need a break, absolutely. But I think everyone feels like they're pushing a boulder uphill. My hopeful for 2012 is Prometheus. It looks like a really exciting film. Obviously, I like Ridley Scott, so I have every confidence that it's going to do well. And I like, the idea of the story, the origins of humanity, and from what I saw of the trailer, looks very, very exciting. And I can see it fitting in to the 2012 cultural demand. What do we need? Maybe we need to return to our roots. Maybe we need to get back to basics to beat a dead horse. But
and it's nice because it is a fresh story.
It's a completely fresh story, and thank God it's not a reboot.
Yeah.
Because Fox decided to do the Predator Alien mashup, that kind of murdered that possibility.
Yeah.
Which is okay, because I don't want to see any more Predator Alien mashups.
no, after the Requiem, I think that I was done with that.
I was there for the first one, and I was there for the second one. And I wondered why.
And, The Dark Knight Rises, I'll wait and see what happens. My only disappointment with that, being a Batman fanatic, is that it's over after number 3, and any possibility of a number 4.
I think it's smart.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, I do too. But,
I kind of respect Christopher Nolan more.
I do
for
too,
doing
and
that.
I think what he's doing is the right thing. My only issue when it comes to superhero films is the break in consistency.
I wouldn't credit Christopher Nolan's artistic integrity so quickly, though, because it was always part of Warner Brothers' plans to end it at 3, mostly because they're eager to sort of reboot their DC universe and do what Marvel has been doing and do a sort of unified universe with their characters. And of course, Christian Bale's Batman is set in such a realistic setting that it wouldn't really match with Green Lantern or whatever.
Right. No, obviously there's the financial concern, but my concern is always, well, is that going to be a successful angle? Is he going to be successful Bruce Wayne?
Yeah,
You don't know.
Like that.
But I think
And-
that's the fun.
I know.
You know what I mean? If you take the idea of a superhero story as, like a form of, shared mythology that, someone just takes a story, tweaks it, retells it.
Right.
Having someone go in and retell it, just, take it from a different angle, like you realize the character's been told so many times that they've just been polished down to this, reflective sheen that, means they can be anything, in terms of...
Yeah,
And I like that. I like that. People keep talking about the next vision of Batman, like, let's just leave it there, and like 10 years later, we'll do the Frank Miller, Dark Knight Returns series.
Mm-hmm.
Even bring back Christian Bale as, an older man and kind of like try and redo it. I don't know if people are really saying that. I'm just saying it. It would be pretty cool. But the thing is, I think actually what would be kind of fun if they were to kind of reboot something is actually move away from the movies for a while, do a television show, and do it from like the Gotham Night, or is it Gotham Central or Gotham?
the cop series?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that
Dude,
was awesome.
Gotham Central.
Gotham Central. Yeah.
Where it's regular cops, hard-boiled writing,
Yeah.
with just these weird super villains, who suddenly how are you going to fight these guys and what the hell, and suddenly we're walking into a room and you get frozen by Mr. Freeze and your friends
Yeah, and
I-
it's kind of funny, even the way they walk into the building and you've got the bat sign that's like up in the air, and they hate that.
yeah, and they don't,
They absolutely hate that.
because the thing is, Batman isn't everywhere.
No.
Yeah.
It's the cops are, so it's only like one time in 100, I'm sure he shows up where they happen to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's probably late most of the time. But I think that would actually be kind of an interesting, thing to kind of feed the time until we finally do a movie. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Okay, I see. I don't know, because Birds of Prey did so well.
You're right.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
they
DC's done so well with their animated series, but their live action stuff.
Love
is
it.
just,
they tried to make it like Smallville and
our biggest surprises from last year were all television, and yet our biggest expectations for next year are all movies.
well, I haven't
All right, I
set
guess we're
my
not-
big expectation, but
Sorry, go for it. Lay it on me.
I'm looking forward to Game of Thrones season 2. That's the one thing that I'm really counting down the days, going like, okay, I can't wait to see what they're gonna do. Second book is Clash of Kings, and lots of stuff is happening in that book, and I'm like, okay, how are they gonna translate this on the screen? Because I gotta say, like, when I saw Game of Thrones, I was a bit iffy. I read the book, liked it, and then I was like, oh, I don't know how this is gonna translate on the screen. And it worked. I thought they did an amazing job. And also the fact that they had 10 episodes, very compact. Like, this is the smart thing of HBO. Like, it's always 12 episodes, 10 episodes, very compact, and just enough. Sometimes it gets too long. Like, you were mentioning Revenge and everything. And I'm sure you could, easily shave off like 2-3 episodes and the story would be that much tighter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the case of Revenge in particular, because they didn't know if it was going to get renewed, and you could see it go towards a very definitive ending, and then there was some reshuffling, and that's when you had the Japanese guy show up out of nowhere. It's like, you must complete your training in Japan. And she was like, okay. And I was like, what? And then they never talked about it again.
Until in the last episode, we're going to find out she's a ninja.
You can see like a lot of plot threads just get fixed the next episode, because we're gonna do that later.
That's it.
What I'm looking forward to in 2012 is also in the same category, which is the category known as "In Your Face, Chris." Also television. But The Walking Dead, the season 2 had a really rough start because of infighting with the network and the
But
creators.
what is up with AMC? They're always about to lose their writers. They had like the same thing almost happened with Mad Men and Breaking Bad as well.
Contact negotiations for Mad Men, yeah.
Yeah, but that's not so surprising. It's because they don't have HBO's resources
the budget.
and they don't have the budgets, but they want to make shows with that same pedigree.
Well, they don't own that many shows, and the one show they own is AMC, and they couldn't end Mad Men, from what I understand, and now they've partnered up to keep Breaking Bad go, but they've screwed themselves with the Mad Men, so they couldn't afford some of the stuff on AMC. And that's the problem that you're talking about.
That's exactly it. So, no, it's not surprising that's happened because, all these creators want the budget to make those great series that they've been commissioned to do, but AMC just doesn't have the funds for it.
No.
But they are stuck in that bind, and the season 2 of Walking Dead started off moderately slow and, visually boring. The stories were still good, the characters were still interesting, but it's just like it was always the same farm and always the same forest, and it's just blah. But they sort of paid it all off in the final scene of the mid-season finale, and just when I was about to go, maybe I should give this up, they just redeemed everything and made it awesome again, and I'm actually really looking forward to their comeback in 2012. Especially since that's going to be the episodes where they no longer have Frank Darabont's influence on it, and it's going to be a completely new creative team, who, to be honest, I like better anyway.
Oh, I didn't realize he was in any way involved in the beginning of season 2.
Yeah, he was.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So that should be really interesting. And the other show I'm looking forward to is the series finale of The Closer. That's a TNT show, for those of you who are not familiar with it. It's about a Dallas...
Glenn Close?
No, she's not Glenn Close.
Kara Sedgwick?
That's who it is.
Oh,
Kara
okay,
Sedgwick,
yeah.
I was going to say a show that maybe mimics that style is probably Body of Proof. You have a strong female lead who basically is your crime fighter / solver. And, from The Closer, that's what I remember from the seasons that I've seen, but maybe it's gone elsewhere.
Yeah, it's a little bit more politically oriented, because the thing with The Closer, it started off with her being a very agile cop, but one hell of a liar. But the thing what they did is that every time she moves up the food chain within the department, and every time politics get a larger role in her life more and more, and now that we've reached the final season, they're paying all of that off, where it's all politics that are just taking over her job right now, and they've introduced some new characters. It's really, really fascinating right now. It really is heading towards a conclusion that will feel like a conclusion to her life, to that character's story within the show, within 6-7 seasons of the show. So
Well,
I'm
in
really
that
looking
case,
forward to
listeners, it's nothing like Body of Proof.
I take it all back. For me, Dimitri, I think I'm going to actually riff off of your television thing, but
Wow, your argument was like completely crap, huh? Oh, we're all looking forward for
yeah,
movies.
no, because actually, what I'm interested in is Brian K. Vaughan, the creator of Walking Dead, is returning to comic books this year with a new comic called Saga,
Oh.
and it's kind of a space.
Whoa! Brian K. Vaughan didn't invent
No,
Walking
he did
Dead.
Why
Oh,
the
you're
Last
right.
Man.
Oh my
That's
god,
Kirkman.
He did
Yeah.
Why the Last Man.
Yeah.
Why the Last Man
And,
Ex Machina.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, and he's got this new series, which is basically going to be a family trying to survive in the middle of like an intergalactic war, and so it's going to be a space opera. I'm curious to see where he goes with that, because I'm sure he's done it, but I haven't followed his career closely enough to see what he does with science fiction or fantasy style to that level. So I'm curious. But then I'm back to television then. So Saga, yes. But actually the biggest thing I'm looking forward to is comic book related somewhat, but going back to television, is the adaptation of Brian Michael Bendis and I think it's Michael Oeming. Powers. It's a cop story where it's basically there are superheroes out there, but superheroes have been somewhat outlawed.
Yeah.
And there's a division within the police force who specialize in tracking them down or dealing with superhero crime or supervillain crime. And one of the main people on that task force, it turns out, was actually their former Superman of this world. And whether he's lost his powers or decided not to use his powers, you're not quite sure at the beginning. But I think this one might actually be minimally special effects driven, you know what I mean, in a way. So I think it actually might be able to kind of enter that world in a way that you could afford on a television budget or network television budget week by week. And if you've got good stories, then you can still have a weekly, like Mystery of the Week, with like a through arc, and I think it actually might adapt well.
Having read some of the later issues of Powers, it goes into territory that I don't think is really easy to adapt to television. It gets very meta. But I think it's one of those concepts that they should really mostly take the concept and run with it.
I think it's going to go its own route for
Yeah.
sure. If it does, because some of that stuff.
Yeah.
The whole episode of just like the cavemen fighting each other. But I think it actually might be a good in for because I don't think that ABC. What was it? No Ordinary Family did too well.
No.
And I think Heroes kind of disappointed me as well. So
You?
How about the
Just
cape?
you.
yeah, I'm just saying.
Chris, how about the cape?
Well, the cape, I don't think it had its chance to fly.
Oh.
Get out, everybody!
Why did you make that joke?
But they follow beats. I kind of knew what you were going to get, so I wasn't in a hurry to watch it. But when I did see it, it blew me away. It was just was really good. Tom Hardy was awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And, Nick Nolte, if you can maybe tell me a little bit about your acting.
No! Don't get on the ship! No!
No, but Nick Nolte himself was good. He's maybe, for me, almost the weakest part of the movie just because of one of the tropes that he's got as a character. But the two characters who are doing the fighting are each believable. The fighting itself...
Nolte in the room with us.
Why did you get on the ship? Nice to see you.
It's an honor.
Why? Me too.
All right, no, actually, who we have here with us as well is...
Oh, I'm Eric. Sometimes writer, full-time teacher.
Yes, and today we are going to talk about 2011 and 2012. Actually, we're mostly going to talk about what we want from 2012, since this is a new year and we're all looking forward to it. Now, we're going to start with something I like to call show and tell, and we're going to do something different. Instead of making recommendations, we're going to talk to you about a little bit about what came as a surprise to us in 2011, so that in case you missed it, you can maybe catch it. Although we'll probably have spoiled it for you at this point. Why don't you get us started, Nick Nolte?
Yes.
What came as a surprise to me this year? Actually, recently, I just watched the movie Warrior, and quite frankly, I never expected it. I'm not a big fan of those big UFC or MMA, the whole thing, but for some reason that movie really worked. And I didn't expect to enjoy a kind of film like that. And okay, I'm gonna say this. Usually when it's Friday, I'm pretty tired because I'll teach, and I get home and I'll watch a movie, and most of the time I fall asleep on it. That movie I watched till the end, and I was so invested.
In terms of, surprises of the year 2011, I have to say that was the biggest surprise for me too. Like I like the sports genre as long as there's no animal in it. Air Pooch or whatever.
Right.
The underdog sports movie where the dog is the underdog. I'm not a big fan of, and there's more movies in that genre than you would care to admit.
Yes, I love the karate dog. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dreamer's Edge podcast 2012! Yay! Alright, we're a small little bunch today. I've got to my left...
Yannis, how you doing, everybody? I'm a subtitle editor, sometime cocktail genius.
Hey.
Alright, and this is Chris, occasional writer and editor as well.
And I'm Dimitri, webmaster of DreamersEdge.com and movie critic. And also we have today a very special guest star. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Nick Nolte.